Hello everyone, welcome to a new topic today, and today we will be speaking about the counter-terrorism meet which is going to be conducted by India in the month of October. Now this meet is something very important and special because it will be discussing about the emerging threats which terrorism brings along with it. So apart from the conventional methods of terrorism, there are emerging new threats in terrorism, and so there is no framework or a code which will deal with these type of emerging threats, and so this meet on counter-terrorism in the month of October is very important. And as an aspirant of civil services, you have terrorism in your general studies paper 3, which has a very specific topic with regard to terrorism in the section called as security. And so it's very important for you to know not only what is terrorism and its types and how there is measures to deal with it, but also what are the emerging threats, because now this meeting is focusing on the emerging threats. So before going into the topic, let us just look at what is terrorism. Now terrorism means violence. Whenever we think of terrorism, the first thing which comes to our mind is violence. But then criminal violence and terrorism are two different things. So if you look at terrorism, it is the use of violence, and it aims to instill a fear in people to achieve political change. So violence of any type, if it aims to achieve a political change and instill fear in the people, and this may be called as terrorism. However, there are many other definitions also which are given, and so there is no one particular definition to terrorism, but the most accepted one is that it differs from criminal violence because it aims to achieve a political change and it instills fear in the people. Now the terrorists claim that they fight for a just cause, but ethically the use of violence definitely is not acceptable. When you want to fight for a just cause, there are different methods like the Satyagraha of Gandhi ji also, and you can even protest, but using violence definitely is not accepted in any religion, culture, or also any norm of governance. So this is what is terrorism. Looking at briefly what are the types of terrorism, you have like state-sponsored terrorism, ideology-oriented terrorism, religious terrorism, criminal terrorism, ethnic terrorism. I will not be going into details of this because the main aim of the video is to speak on counter-terrorism meet that is going to be held in October. So these are the type of terrorism, and we need to know a little about these type of terrorism as well. So counter-terrorism is nothing but a political and military activities that are designed to prevent or thwart terrorist activities. So this is the meaning of counter-terrorism. The steps, political, military, institutional, etc., which is taken, or any policies or frame cooperation with international arena to prevent or thwart terrorism. Now we all know that counter-terrorism has been a very important part of a discussion, not only nationally but also whenever India has bilateral meetings with neighbor countries or any international forum or any regional organization. Counter-terrorism definitely is one of the important points on the agenda, and India makes sure to make its stand very clear that it is against terrorism in all its form, and it does not support any ideology which justifies terrorism. India has also been a victim of terrorism very recently with regard to the Mumbai terror attacks, now the perpetrators of which have still not been brought to the books, and also Pakistan hasn't been cooperating with India very well on this issue. You have the Uri attacks and many others also. So the recent ones are these. Very recently, we had drones coming up from the cross border, that is Pakistan, into India, and there was a fear that these drones were coming off and they might carry some very lethal weapons, etc. also across the border. So we even also during the news we find sleeper cells, etc. being and also operations, anti-terror operations being carried out in Jammu and Kashmir, and the government has been using an iron hand especially to deal with terrorists, especially in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, going into the detail, this meeting will bring the representatives of the 15 countries of the UNSC together, including Russia and China, to talk about the emerging threats now of terrorism. Now, India will host diplomats and officials from 15 countries of the United Nations Security Council. We should remember that India was chairing the UNSC in August 2021, and it had clearly laid down an 8-point program to counter terrorism, which I will be specifying in this video very soon. So, the 15 countries which will be attending this meeting are China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, United States, and the non-permanent members are presently Albania, Brazil, Gabon, Ghana, India, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico, Norway, UAE. Now, the meeting of this Counter-Terrorism Committee, which India is chairing for 2022 as a member of UNSC, will focus particularly on the challenges such as terrorism financing, cyber threats, and the use of drones. As I mentioned earlier, that the drones were used by Pakistan very recently, if you remember, to across the border, violating the cross-border laws, especially with respect to India, and there was a sense of threat also because of these unmanned aerial vehicles. So now this meeting is going to highlight even the cross-border threats from across Pakistan and Afghanistan. We all know that since the takeover of Taliban, the fear regarding with terrorism again starting off has been increased not only in the neighborhood but also as India, because Afghanistan is a very near neighborhood to us and we need a peaceful neighborhood for the economy to grow, especially in the post-COVID times. So this meeting will also highlight the cross-border threats from Pakistan and Afghanistan at the meeting. Now, India has been also strongly pushing for the adoption of the Comprehension Convention on International Terrorism, which is an important convention which India has always been highlighting day in and day out in any international fora for its adoption. This will also deal with the ideology of terrorism and how to crack down on terrorists, especially with international cooperation. So, as we know that counter-terrorism, when we think of counter-terrorism, the very immediate thing which comes to our mind also is the Financial Action Task Force, which has recently been held, and also Pakistan has been removed off the grey list. So this is one very recent news which has taken part. So the FATF is one such mechanism now to deal with the counter-terrorism measures with regard to financing of terrorism. But then the newer threats which are emerging because of drones and cryptocurrency does not have any framework as of now, and this meeting will focus especially on bringing up of frameworks or mechanisms to deal with terrorism, especially growing because of cryptocurrency which can be used to finance terrorist attacks, and also the drones. The special meeting will focus on three significant areas, that is the internet and the social media, terrorism financing, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Now, as an aspirant of civil services, and when you write the mains examination, as I told you, it's not only important for you to remember not only what is terrorism and the types, but also how the new and emerging especially the new and emerging threats are posing a most important challenge for the states to deal with terrorism. So the states will need more mechanisms and especially much of more intelligence and resources infrastructure to deal with the emerging threats. Now, terrorism has always been a sticking point between India and China also, because China as time again withstood the the mentioning of the Al-Qaeda chief, especially with regard to Jaish-e-Mohammed chief, especially with regard to the UN designated terrorist list, and India has been against this. Also, Pakistan has not taken much steps to bring to books the Mumbai terror attacks, the culprits. So terrorism has been a sticking point between India and Pakistan and also China with regard to listing of the terrorists at the UNSC. Now, with the recent drone attack by US in Kabul on an Al-Qaeda chief, Zawahiri, shows that there is still the threat of terrorism in Afghanistan, and with the Taliban regime not being recognized by many countries including India. Though India has been providing assistance with regard to the earthquake and also during the COVID times, but India hasn't really recognized the Taliban regime, and all the countries are pressing forward for Taliban to bring in a civilian government and which will recognize the rights of the people, especially the women there. Now, let us go to the 8-point plan which India spelled out during the UNSC meet in August 2001. Now, this meeting was chaired by our External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar, and he made clear an 8-point action plan to fight terror during the chairing of the session by India in August 2021. So, what are the 8 important points now? And this is very important for you to remember these points as a part of the counter-terrorism measures which India is taking to deal with terrorists. The first point is summoning the political will. So, do not justify terrorism and do not glorify terrorists, because there are some states which make a difference between good terrorism and bad terrorism. But terrorism anywhere is a threat and it is not justified. Acts of violence are never justified ethically. No double standards. Terrorists are terrorists. This is the second point. Distinctions are made only at our own peril. So, do not place blocks and holds on listing requests without any reason. This is especially with regard to China, because China has been blocking the listing of the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief in the United Nations list of designated terrorists, which has been especially criticized by India. Discourage. The third point is discourage exclusive thinking and be on guard against new terminologies and false priorities. The next point is enlist, delist objectively, not only on political and religious considerations. The next point is recognize linkage to organized crime such as drug trafficking, etc. The next point is support and strengthen the FATF. And finally is provide greater funding to the UN Office of Counterterrorism and adoption of the Comprehension Convention on Counterterrorism. Now, India on its part has taken various steps to combat terror financing, because financing of terrorism through black money or counterterrorism or smuggling drugs, etc. These are the main channels where terror groups actually fake currency, where actually terrorists get financed. And also so this has been highlighted even in the FATF. So what are the activities that actually India has taken now to deal with terrorism? So some of the steps with regard to countering terror financing is that first of all, the provisions of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967 to combat terror financing by criminalizing smuggling or circulation of counterfeit Indian currency has been strengthened. The provisions of these acts have been strengthened. Now, a terror funding and a fake currency cell has been constituted in the NIA. Now, NIA is an agency also which looks into terrorist attacks and cases. So, an advisory on terror financing has been issued to the states and union territories to investigate the cases of high quality counterfeit Indian currency notes. Training programs are regularly conducted for the state police, and also India conducts various bilateral exercises where counter-terrorism training is an important part of those exercises. So the recent exercise which India has been conducted is the Al-Naga exercise. So this is the bilateral exercise which India carries on with various countries, also have a component of counter-terrorism, exchange of practices or information or capacity building. The next is a fake Indian currency notes network, which is a channel which is one of the channels of terror financing in India. A group has been formed by the Ministry of Home Affairs to share intelligence now among the security agencies to counter the problem of circulation of fake currency notes in the country. Intelligence and security agencies of the center and the states work in tandem to watch over the elements of terror financing activities as per the law. Security on the international borders, especially with regard to the coastline and also the international border areas with Pakistan, China, etc., have been strengthened using new surveillance technology, deploying of additional manpower round the clock, and also establishing observation posts along the international border. MOUs have been signed, especially with India and neighbors, to prevent counter smuggling and also circulation of fake currency notes, and also with regard to drug trafficking. Training programs are conducted very frequently with the neighbors of India, such as Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, you have Myanmar, then you have Sri Lanka, etc., with regard to smuggling, counterfeiting of Indian currency, and also drug trafficking along with human trafficking. So these are some of the important steps taken with regard to terror funding. Other steps have been taken with regard to improving the infrastructure along the borders, and especially your surveillance, your spying, etc., and also manpower training, capacity building, strengthening of laws, strengthening of the internal security forces, etc., and constant cooperation with the countries has been a motive and the focus of the government to especially deal with counter-terrorism, because terrorism is not only limited to a single border, and it is cross-border. So constant cooperation and coordination between the countries is important to deal with counter-terrorism. Now this meeting will focus and come up with important discussion with regard to emerging threats through social media, to cryptocurrencies, etc. And so we need to focus on the important points and the discussions and any document also coming out from such a meeting. So I hope this topic will really help you to write a good answer. In case you get a question on the mains, do let me know in your comments section whether you really like the comment, and if you do like, share and subscribe to the channel, and please come up with your suggestions for more topics to be discussed if you like any of them. Until then, all the best.